Hi everyone, welcome to our weekly Q&A session, and it is my pleasure to welcome here today our coach Richard. So Richard, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing today, Veronica?
I'm also good. It's finally the weather is warm. It's almost like it feels like summer. I had finally had first ice cream this year, so everything is perfect.
Wow. Yeah, it's like summer here too. It's just, I love this time of year. It's been
Yeah.
great.
By the way, where are you located?
I'm in Denver, Denver,
In
Colorado.
Denver.
Yep.
Okay, nice, awesome, great.
Good.
So we already have our first question, and I think this is a really nice and interesting one. We have a question from Ian. Hi, Veronika Richard. I'm just curious as to whether there was one aspect of recovery journey that you found the most difficult, challenging, or if you remember a particular turning point positive. So,
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Well, great question. Thank you for that. And I think what I found most challenging was getting off medication. I had been on various medications for sleep for a number of years. And I kind of defined myself as being broken and needing that for my brain to work properly.
mhm,
So I ended up, going on and off, and I was very conflicted over the years. But I finally, ended up stopping everything about 2 years ago, and it was really a magical moment, as we call it, because I found that I could actually sleep without medication. And that really convinced me that I wasn't broken and that it was possible to sleep without medication. And this is something I found also in the one-on-one um, coaching calls that I do with people, that when they finally get off medication, they realize that they didn't need it after all. And
mhm.
um, the kind of the typical response the doctors have to people with insomnia is to prescribe a pill. It's so much easier than discussing what's going on and figuring out and so forth. That's what we do, but that's not typically what most doctors do. And so a lot of people get on medication when they probably don't really need it. So that was kind of the
Mm.
turning point for me.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so for such a wonderful answer. And it's really true. Like people, they quite quickly they get used to taking those pills, and maybe they don't do as much. Like it's not about the chemistry; it's more about the psychological dependency. Like it's about the
Mhm.
belief I need something external to
Right.
support my sleep, to promote sleep,
Mhm.
and it's really really hard to broke such a belief, especially when we are I also, that's basically you were speaking about my experience too, because I was also taking pills for many years,
Mhm.
and it's really hard to come off them and to challenge this belief. I'm able to sleep without pills.
Yeah.
So but if I could also share my experience, and I was thinking about this while you were speaking, and what was one of the most challenging aspects of my journey was that when I was talking to someone about my insomnia, what I was experiencing and going through, nobody believed me. And this was really hard for me, because when they didn't believe me, they were basically doubting what I was saying. So through their doubts, I was doubting myself. Like,
Mhm.
am I really experiencing this? Is this me? Is this what is happening to me? Because even when I was describing it, what I was going through, it was it felt so distant. Like this can't be. So this was especially particularly challenging for me. And what was like a turning point? Like I would say, so many times I was very hopeless. And but one time, it was after it was like maybe 5 years into my insomnia, I got to spoke to one psychologist, and she told me she she experienced insomnia at some period of her life, and this was for me so unbelievable. Like finally, someone knows what I'm talking about, and
Mhm.
like she was, I think at that time she was using pills, and it was her way to treat it. She didn't tell me much, but only the fact that somebody else knows what I'm talking about. It gave me such a huge relief. So maybe I'm not the only one in the world, right? And
Yeah.
I remember it brought me such a huge relief that it was, I think, consequently, a few weeks after that, I slept well. But
Hmm.
of course, those sneaky thoughts like, is this real? What if this is just a fluke? How long is it going to last? They crept in, and I struggled with insomnia again and again, over and over. So, and of course, the other one was stumbling upon Daniel's channel, which resolved the issue for me, and I sleep fine now when I
Right.
understand the issue.
Yeah.
So, okay, the questions are coming. Thank you so much, everybody, for them. And we have a question from Happy Jahar. Is there an easier way to not engage with our thoughts and stop thinking? I struggle with this a lot whenever I go to sleep. It feels that I'm consciously thinking, but when I try to stop, I can't. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this can certainly be tricky. What I find most useful for this is to realize that thoughts aren't the voice of reality. That just
Mm,
because we think something doesn't mean it's true. They can seem very real, and especially when there's an emotional um, component to the thoughts, we feel that this is very true. But when we realize that thoughts are just thoughts and that they pass away, we can start to get we can start to feel less overwhelmed by them. So I like the metaphor of a leaf floating on a stream. The leaves kind of represent thoughts. They kind of float by and then they float away. So they come and they go. And when we have this kind of observer perspective on thoughts, then we're not as taken by them, and we realize that thoughts. This is just in the nature of thoughts. Another thing I found helpful was when I had thoughts like this and I was kind of wrapped up in them, just to say, oh, whatever, or oh, well, and just kind of deploying this indifference toward it, I found really helpful. So these are a couple of things that I found helpful that a questioner might want to try.
absolutely. Yes, this is definitely very helpful. And maybe what I would just add is that we cannot consciously stop ourselves from thinking. This is the nature of our brain. And trying hard to stop ourselves from thinking, it becomes a struggle by itself.
Hmm.
So, because we often see this as an obstacle to sleep. Oh, so I can't think, I can't have these thoughts, otherwise I will not sleep. So, besides struggling with not sleeping, we struggle with having thoughts. And so, uh, you mentioned really nice techniques, and like about the leaves. I really, really like this one. And just one more thing, I sometimes in the middle of the night, I would just get up from bed and wrote down everything what was going on in my mind.
Hmm.
It didn't brought me immediately to sleep, but I felt much, much calmer and much, much better, in much better headspace. Or another thing is, um, uh, it said like when you are too much in your head, then get into your body. When you're in your body, get into your head. So in a
Right.
way, when your thoughts are racing too much, and you just you have already spent too much time. You have already acknowledged the thoughts. Let the thoughts be there. You don't want to spend like this all night long. What you can do is just to allow these thoughts, and then you still can distract yourself. And you can distract yourself by seeing what is going on in your body, or just the little mindfulness practice, like how cozy is my bed, how does the sheets feel on my skin, and these kind of things. So there are many approaches, but the key point is here, we don't want to stop the thoughts. We don't want to get away from them. We want to allow them. We
Right.
all do this to allow these thoughts.
Yeah. And
So,
one further thing I could add is that there's a difference between thoughts and thinking. So we can just be lying in bed, or this can be during the day, and a thought can pop into our head. Oh, what if I don't sleep? Or, what if we can always ask us what ifs. Now, these are basically involuntary. They just happen. They just pop into our
Mm-hmm.
head. But then we have a choice to take this thought and run with it and elaborate on it and think about it more. And that's the thinking part of it. And
Mm-hmm.
we have a choice over that. We have choice over whether we're going to elaborate on them or just let them go and float away. So this comes from psychologist Nick Wignall, the difference
Mm-hmm.
between thinking and thoughts. And I find it very, very helpful.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for this addition. We have a question from A series. Hello, coaches. Hello. Hope you're doing fine. How can we desensitize and sensitize nervous system due to the many years of insomnia? So, Richard, what are your thoughts?
So desensitize ourselves from the many years of stuff. Well, we do acquire habits over time, and we acquire a certain way of doing things, and this applies to our behaviors. It applies to our feelings and our thoughts. So I think to become desensitized is really just to acquire the education, that we provide here, and get the support. And with time, we will be able to put insomnia behind us. We can call it desensitization. I think it's really just a matter of time, and there's not one special trick to get us desensitized. But I think it's just a matter of time, repetition, support. Self-kindness is very important because we tend to be very critical of ourselves. Befriending wakefulness is very important because we tend to push it away. So when we say we're sensitized, I think we're talking about a bunch of beliefs that we have and habits that we have that are just going to resolve over time.
Exactly. This is a really really good answer, and we need to understand that it really takes time, just like you said, Richard. And when our nervous system gets sensitized, it takes a lot of time to calm down and to desensitize. And in the meantime, we can get easily triggered, like things that didn't bother us before insomnia can bother us much more. We can, our fight or flight system will launch much more easier, and we need to approach this with understanding and self kindness, just like you mentioned, that this is really, really needed. And when we bring this self kindness to ourselves, like, yes, okay, of course I overreacted like this. This is normal because I had a really difficult life experience, and it takes time until I will be on a place where I wanted to be. So, yeah, I totally agree, Richard.
Right.
Um, Right. We have a question from Eva Templeton. Hi, Eva. I suffer from severe insomnia and anxiety and can only sleep with Ativan. Tracking now for 5 months, 1 milligram, no more than that. If I don't take it, I cannot alter all. Please help. We have talked about the pills at the beginning, but do you have any additional thoughts, Richard? How to help Eva?
Yeah. I was actually on Ativan years ago for a while, and I thought I'd never get off it. And it can be, it takes time to get off, and of course, always consult with your doctor about it. Don't just try to do it yourself. But it takes time, and it takes time not only because there's the physical withdrawal when you try to get off it, but there's a psychological withdrawal also. We view ourselves as needing it, and we become attached to it. We become fearful that we're going to sleep poorly if we try to reduce the dose or stop it. And our fear that that's going to happen can be responsible for a lot of the what we perceive as withdrawal. So it's not all physical withdrawal. There's definitely a psychological component. We also talk about delegation. So when we take a pill, we often delegate to the pill the job of making us sleep. Even if it doesn't really make us sleep, we think it's going to. So it has kind of a placebo effect. So going off it can put us kind of in a situation of de-delegation. So we're thinking, oh, well, I'm not delegating to this, so I must have to try a lot harder to get to sleep. And so we ramp up our sleep efforts, and it's by ramping up these efforts that we've to a large extent we find it more difficult to sleep without it. So I know this is a difficult issue. It takes time, um, and not everyone goes off of sleeping pills when they are on a recovery journey, and that's okay too. It's just an individual decision.
Absolutely. Um, I remember in the book by Joseph Pennell, the book is called You Can Sleep Too. And he shared, like he was coming off the pills. He suffered from insomnia for 2 decades, and most of the time he was taking some kind of pills. So, of course, it's this belief that I need something external that helps me to sleep. It's very, very ingrained in the brain. So he was cutting down the dosage of the pill, and as he was doing this kind of process, uh, eventually he was crushing to the dust the pill. So it's and then he said, like, one evening, or he wrote one evening, he just looked at the pill and the tiny amount of the dust from the pill. He said, like, no, this is impossible. How can this make me to sleep, put me to
Right.
sleep? And this was the last time he took any pill, any support for his sleep. He just threw the spoons away with the pill. And basically, what I liked about this is that this process was not forceful. It was not like, okay, I stop it and I don't take it never ever again, right? Then we suffer. Then there is a lot of conflict that is going on in our brain, like, oh, should I take it, should I not take it? But when our brain comes naturally to this conclusion, this dust cannot just make me put to sleep, then it's much easier for us to undelegate, to stop delegating this responsibility to the pill, because we believe it can't be the dust, the tiny amount of the pill that would make me sleep. So yeah, you can try this also, Eva. And right, we have a question from Marco Kononan. Can you tell more about the post game from insomnia to immunity roadmap? So, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. So insomnia to immunity, well, it's a journey, and I think what people think that when they finally put their insomnia behind them, there's going to be a band playing, there's going to be fireworks, and there's going to be some marked by something major. But what
Mhm.
really actually happens is you just kind of lose interest in the whole issue of sleep.
Mhm.
Um, when we have insomnia, this is kind of our focus. This is kind of the the most important thing happening in our lives, we think.
Mhm.
And when we start putting it behind us, we just become less interested in it. It's kind of like if you have a headache and you think about the headache and this is terrible, and then you think about your day, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I haven't the headache has been gone for a while now, and I just haven't been thinking about it. Kind of the same thing with insomnia. Um, so the process is always a gradual process, and there's no special tricks or secrets,
Mhm.
but we just find it's a less interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, that's right. And key of the recovery, it's not to never ever experience a sleepless, to never have a sleepless night again. It's about being open to experience insomnia again. And even if we have a sleepless night, trouble sleeping, disturbed sleep, then the reaction is the most important, how we react to it. And this is what we basically teach in our insomnia immunity program. And it's our reaction how to our sleeplessness, to our sleep disturbance. So I hope we have
Yeah,
answered your question, Marco. And okay, so yeah, thank you note from Eva. So you're very welcome. And we have a question from Himanshu. I am Himanshu from India. Hi, Himanshu. I struggle with intrusive thoughts a lot. For a month, I've been suffering from insomnia. These days, my mind is always preoccupied with sleep anxiety. I get suicidal thoughts. So, what do you think, Richard?
Yeah, yeah. Well, Himanshu, I'm sorry you've been experiencing this, and certainly, if you're having suicidal thoughts, then be sure to talk to your doctor or your counselor about this. Nothing here is medical advice, of course, but it's so common for us to be wrapped up in our insomnia and to think of nothing else, especially when it's a fairly recent onset. One of the things is that we feel um, mystified by it, and one of the jobs of education that we provide here is to demystify it, so it doesn't seem like this bizarre, mysterious thing. And I found it so liberating when I, first discovered Daniel's work several years ago and realized that there's an explanation for this. And so education and understanding can go a long way in making these thoughts less consistent, less constant and intrusive, and making things seem less scary.
Perfect. Um, we have a question from Utah. Hi, Muta. Good evening. After a very stressful event, emotional, I can't feel sleepy or groggy anymore. It's so strange because even if I sleep less or don't sleep for days, my body can't feel tired. So this sounds really familiar, right?
Oh yeah, this is very familiar to me. Yeah. So sometimes, very often, we speak of hyperarousal as the main thing that keeps us from sleeping, and usually hyperarousal is associated with anxiety, although it can be associated with things like excitement also. But sometimes we're not really conscious of feeling anxious, and this is what I call silent hyperarousal, where the hyperarousal is there and it's enough to keep us awake and not keep us from even being sleepy. So the sleepiness can be gone without our consciously being aware of being anxious, but it's there, it's under the surface, and it's really what's keeping us awake. So the same approach that we use to insomnia with kind of more overt hyperarousal applies when it's more this silent kind of hyperarousal also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And we can have one last question from Eva. My second question is your method applied if my insomnia started before the anxiety started, even though it wasn't as severe as prior to the anxiety? So I can start, and yeah, this is very common. Like usually, it feels like the sleep is gradually disappearing, and we don't feel particularly worried about it, particularly anxious. But over time, we start to get worried. I'm not sleeping. This is not normal. And when we start to perceive it as not normal, our brain mm, is viewing it. Okay, Eva feels like this is not normal, so I think I should send the symptom to her more often, over and over again, until she resolves this. And when we learn to allow this symptom or allow this what we this kind of discomfort, um, then in this case, when we resolve it for the brain, when we allow it to happen, our brain reads the message like this is safe. So I don't have to send this message or this signal over and over again. So uh, yes, so again, this is very common, Eva, and it usually only the later the anxiety flares up. And uh, just recently, I read like something quite interesting. When we are anxious, it usually starts with thoughts. Then comes the anxiety, and we feel it very physically. But when we learn to work on it, when we calm down, the physical symptoms leave, but again, the thought stays. And it's always the thoughts that leave as last. And as we often mention here, the thoughts are, uh, it's not the problem with the thoughts that we have them. The problem is that we believe them. And that's why so very often when we believe a thought, it always translates into an emotion in the body. So it's very, very common. And stay on the channel, educate yourself, and you feel free to share any questions in the future Q&As. Do you have anything to add, Richard, before we wrap up for today?
No, just 100% of what you said, Veronika. And anxiety and insomnia can kind of interact in various ways, and we can really ramp up our anxiety by just worrying more about the insomnia. Whereas if we just kind of realize that it's just kind of a natural process that relates to our brain's fight or flight mechanism, then we won't be so upset and overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you everyone for coming here today and posting your questions. Also, thank you very much to Coach Richard, who answered the questions for you. And I hope to see you all next time. And take care, Richard. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye, Veronika.